Welcome to this week's edition of the Cover 2 podcast. We took a week off, but we're back. We're rejuvenated. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And on today's podcast, we got a lot to talk about. The MLB playoffs have been going on, so we're gonna talk a lot about what's happened so far, and we're gonna talk a little bit about Week 6 in the NFL. We're also gonna do another edition of Do You Care? On the other side of music, we're gonna be talking MLB playoffs.
The biggest moment of the game right here. Gillespie to right. Almora back. He can't get there. Bell scores. Here's Posey. And the Giants have taken the lead. And the Chicago Cubs are moving on to the National Championship Series.
Bottom of the 10th inning, 3-2 on Martin. Matt Bush looking in. The 3-2 pitch. Ground ball hitting to the hole at short. Backhanded by Elvis. Go to second one. Back to first. Low throw. Knocked down by Moreland. Here comes Donaldson. Throw to the plate. Head first slide. He scores. Ball game, Blue Jays.
Winning runs at first and Dustin Pedroia. And the guy trying to save Boston's season is Travis Shaw. The payoff pitch. Swung on a high fly ball, shallow right. Chisenhall is there. He makes the catch. Ball game. And the sweep is complete. And this resilient bunch of Cleveland Indians will play for the American League pennant.
Tonight, when I walked into the mound, I realized that it was gonna be, it was over. You know, it was pretty much probably the last time as a player walking in front of a crowd, and emotion came back out again. And you know, but like I say, I'm happy. Not just for me, not just for how my career went down. I'm happy for this organization for the big step that we took, going from last place to win the division this year.
That last soundbite you heard was the somber press conference after David Ortiz's final Major League game ever, and that was because the Cleveland Indians swept the Boston Red Sox. The playoffs have been awesome so far, Jared, and there was two sweeps in the AL, which you probably wouldn't have expected looking at the way the teams looked. They looked even to me, and on the NL side, the series have been good as well. So I'll let you take over and give me your first take on the Red Sox and Cleveland series and kind of David Ortiz final hurrah.
Yeah, it was very surprising to see the Red Sox not even get one win against the Indians. I didn't feel that the Indians going into this series or even in the regular season had that great of pitching. So I was surprised that the Red Sox bats wouldn't be able to produce more runs. I believe in the game 2, they got shut out 6-0 or 5 or 6-0, I believe. It's just very sad to see David Ortiz have to go out like this. Obviously going to be a future Hall of Famer, no doubt. And for his team to get swept in the first round by the Indians is very sad to see, even though I'm not an actual fan of the Red Sox. What he meant to baseball as a whole will be truly, truly missed. But you know what? You have to give all the credit to the Cleveland Indians. Terry Francona just knows how to win ball games. When he was with the Red Sox and now being with the Indians for the last few years, it's just the way that he gets his players motivated, and I credit a lot of their winning to Terry Francona.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people forget that Terry Francona is even the coach there in Cleveland because he was such a face with the Red Sox. He was on those teams where he was on the team where they came back from 3-0 down with the Yankees in 2003, David Ortiz and his heroics. He was on the team where Aaron Boone hit that that walk-off home run. He was on the teams that won the World Series in Colorado, so he was a Red Sox guy. And to now see him in Cleveland beat the Red Sox, it was a little kind of cool to see because he kind of got his revenge on the team that fired him. And the Indians, you mentioned the pitching too. They were losing. They didn't have their two best starters. Carlos Carrasco, Danny Salazar, both are hurt and probably are going to be hurt for the rest of the postseason, unless they somehow can come back, which I doubt it. So they just went out there with Trevor Bauer and Corey Kluber and got wins. They just grinded out. It seemed to me like Cleveland wanted to win more. Not that the Red Sox weren't trying, but I felt like the Red Sox just kind of took it easy the first game, especially. In the second game, I think they thought Price would just kind of shut them down, which is exactly the opposite, and that's what I want to turn to next. David Price is still horrendous in the playoffs. The guy's ERA is like 8. I don't think he has a win in the playoffs. He might have one. The guy just needs to pitch better. You're signing those bigger contracts. You need to pitch better. Jared, what do you think about David Price?
No, I actually completely agree with you, and I'm not going to put him on the same level as Kershaw as far as pitching-wise, because I believe that Kershaw for the Dodgers is a much better pitcher. But they've both had similar instances in the playoffs where they just can't produce. In the regular season, they're fantastic, and you definitely want them on your team as your ace. But in the playoffs, you need to produce. That's really what it's all about. It doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. All you have to do is get to the postseason, and that's where you're going to be remembered. So for David Price to just come out and give up, I believe he gave up 4 runs in the second inning, and I forget when he got pulled, but it's underperforming, and it's not good. I'm not really sure what the Red Sox plans are for David Price, but if I were them, I would have to take a hard look as to see, okay, he hasn't been able to produce in the playoffs for multiple years. Do we still want to pay this man and have him on our roster?
No, I totally agree. And you mentioned Kershaw being kind of sketchy in the playoffs as well. There's just certain pitchers that are good in the playoffs. There's certain pitchers that are bad. We've seen it with Madison Bumgarner in the past. Fantastic. John Lester in the past. Fantastic in the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit about the NL series a little later. But you bring up a good point. Price, he just doesn't step up, and you're hurting the team that's relying on you. Porcello didn't pitch very well either. So the Red Sox, and in a 5-game series, you need to win one of the first 2 games, or you're screwed. More than likely, you're not coming back.
Nope.
Because you're going to have your worst pitchers pitching, and you're going to be down in a hole, and it's going to be hard to win 3, especially when the other team is going to get another home game no matter what. So it's tough. The Indians sweep them. It's David Ortiz's final game. It wasn't the way you expected it to be, but we've seen weird things in the playoffs already so far. We'll move on to the other AL series, if I can get the words out of my mouth. Toronto and Texas. Now, coming into this series, Jared, it was supposed to be this fight series. Like they were supposed to just brawl every game. We didn't see any of it because Toronto just kind of swept them up real quick. Toronto looked good and Texas looked horrible. I want you to give me your take on the series.
Toronto came out and was able to score runs 10-1 in the first game, and I believe the second game was 5-3. So Texas didn't show up at all. And this whole brawl that happened during the regular season, I really didn't think that was going to translate over into the postseason anyway. In the regular season, there's 162 games. So you lose a game because of a brawl or you get into a fight, that's one thing. But in the playoffs, you need to have your head on straight. And Odor and Joey Bats both knew going into this series that they were going to be a distraction for both of their teams if they came out and they just wanted to be kind of selfish individuals and lean towards that. So Toronto came out and just swung. Like I said, 10-1 in the first game. Where was the pitching for the Rangers? I don't really know. Cole Hamels gave up 5 runs in the third inning, 2 runs in the second, and then I believe he got pulled after that. So very, very underwhelming for the Rangers. I was very surprised. I would have expected this to go 5 games, but obviously Toronto swept him very early.
Well, both Cole Hamels and Yu Darvish pitched horrible. I remember I was tweeting about these games a lot because they were during the day, so I got to watch them. And I remember it was Hamels and Darvish gave up 12 runs in about a matter of 8 innings. Both of them only got through like 4 innings. It was ridiculous. We saw it's just almost the same as the Red Sox. Your 2 best starters going out and just pitching terribly. You're not gonna do well. But like you mentioned, their bats didn't help. Just overall horrible performance by Texas in the playoffs. Then they finally have a solid game where they fight back and forth in the third game. It's 6-6. They go to extra innings, and what happens? It was almost a script, right? You had Matt Bush on the mound in the final inning. And Matt Bush is the guy that hit Jose Bautista that ended up causing the Odor thing to happen. Of course, you have Odor getting hit, and then the knockout around the world earlier this year in May. And what happened? Matt Bush loses the game in the 11th inning off a Rougned Odor error that scores off a Jose Bautista at bat. It's just, you couldn't write it any better.
You can't script it.
But so just every starter for Texas didn't pitch well. You're not going to win a playoff series if your starters can't pitch well. And I think that comes down to it. Toronto looks scary in the playoffs right now. The way they can hit their stars, their four-headed monster of Tulowitzki, Encarnacion, Bautista, and Donaldson look really good. And I can't wait to see that ALCS series.
Yes, agreed.
So we'll move on to the NL side. Speaking of kind of curses and weird things happening, this series between the Cubs and the Giants was looked at as going to be a pretty good series. You had the even year stuff with the Giants, a team that always pitches well in the playoffs, against the Cubs, who are by far the best team in the MLB right now. Oh, the only team over 100 wins during the regular season. Jared, what did you look for going into that series before we talk about the results?
To me, this series was all about pitching. For both teams, I knew that it wasn't going to be high scoring. It was going to be around 3 to 5 runs per team, and it was going to be about which star pitchers can stay in the game for at least 7 innings and give their team a chance to win. And the Giants had multiple opportunities, especially in the last game where they got eliminated. I believe they were up. What was it? 5-3.
In the final game, they were up by 3 runs. In the
3 runs.
In the ninth.
I'm sorry, excuse me. And the Cubs just found a way to win. I feel that their team is so close together, and the glue, the core, their manager, Coach Madden, the way that he is able to relate to his players and get his players to play well, I think speaks volumes as to why the Cubs have been relevant the last 2 years. So, like I said, this isn't a shock that the Cubs won by any means, but I was a little surprised that the Giants, especially Bumgarner, could not pull this out.
Well, and I'll move it back all the way to the first game. 0-0 score. Johnny Cueto's on the mound. He's throwing a gem. John Lester's on the mound for the Cubs. He's throwing a gem. And Cueto gives up a home run in the bottom of the 8th to Javier Baez. Those are the games you can't lose. When you're the clear underdog, and that's what San Francisco was, you can say it's even year. No, that's crap. The Giants, going into that series, were not the favored team. They were supposed to lose. But they could have kind of put that in the back burner by winning that first game. You win that first game, doesn't really matter what you do in the second game because you got Bumgarner in the third game. Bumgarner ended up getting the win in the third game after they were down 2-0. But in that game, the Giants had to have some crazy heroics, which was one of the sound bites you heard earlier when we first started talking about this segment. Connor Gillespie hit a triple in the ninth or in the 8th inning off a Aroldis Chapman, 103-mile-an-hour fastball he hits into the gap. It's unheard of from a guy that barely played for the Angels last season, comes up and hits a big hit. I thought the series was going to turn there. The Giants took the lead, like you said, in the 4th game. They were up by 3. And the relievers for the Giants just completely fell apart. They gave up 3 runs, walks, weird hits, bad fielding. They deserved to lose. And the Giants got lucky. They even won a game. And, now the Cubs are going to be sitting pretty waiting for that Dodgers-Nationals series.
Yeah, it comes down to clutch hitting in the postseason. And it's very, very simple. The Cubs were able to get hits when they needed to, and the Giants were not.
And Anthony Rizzo really hasn't done anything in the series either. It was really Chris Bryant and Javier Baez. I saw Ben Zobrist get a couple good hits. Those were the type of guys getting hits. They didn't even need all their players to win the series. This team's scary. The Cubs are scary. We'll move on to the opponents for the Cubs. And when I say opponents, because this series isn't over yet. We're doing this podcast on Thursday. And the Dodgers and Nationals will play tonight in Game 5 to see who faces the Cubs on Saturday night. This, to me, has been the best series in the playoffs. And I am a Dodgers fan, so that might be a little biased, I think. But it's the only series that's gone 5. The games have been back and forth. They've been long games. There's been a lot of bullpen work. The pitching and hitting's been solid enough. I'll let you give the unbiased prediction and analysis of this series before I give my bias. Go ahead.
Yes. So the Dodgers came out of the gates and were able to win Game 1 4-3. Looked very strong. Like I said in the previous matchup, I also felt that in this matchup it wasn't going to be a lot of runs. It was going to be more about the pitching and still clutch hits. Bryce Harper, who I feel is one of the best players in this league and the face of baseball, to me hasn't done enough yet. It's been more of the surrounding cast that has kind of propelled Washington into this 2-2 tie going into tonight's game. So, like I said, the Dodgers took Game 1. Washington came back and they took Games 2 and 3 pretty easily. Game 2 they won 5-2. Game 3 they won 8-3. And obviously Game 4 was more of a nail biter with the Dodgers able to pull it out 6-5 to take this game back to Washington for Game 5 tonight. So Kershaw was able to go on, I believe it was only 3 days of rest.
3 days rest. Yeah.
Yes, in the last game. So, Kershaw is not going tonight.
No, he's not going tonight.
So even though he's had his struggles in the postseason, Game 5, win or go home, without Kershaw, I'm going to have to go with the Nationals to win this series.
Well, and you mentioned Kershaw. I want to talk a little bit about Kershaw. Kershaw, if you look at his record, he's usually not very good in the first game he pitches. And the second game on short rest, statistically, he's always been really good at. So coming into that Game 4, I expected Kershaw to be a point on. He was. His only problem was he couldn't finish the 6th inning in Game 4. He walked Bryce Harper, loaded the bases, and then the relievers for the Dodgers, who weren't the top relievers, it was Pedro Baez and Louis Avalon came on, and they tied the score. And all those runs get put on Kershaw. So I want to give a little credit to Kershaw here. He didn't pitch bad in either game this series, but he did make it a nail biter, like you said. Going back to the beginning of the series, this has been back and forth. You mentioned the first game. Very close game. Both starting pitchers didn't pitch as well as you'd expect them to, Scherzer and Kershaw. And it pretty much came down to whoever's bullpen was better, and the Dodgers got the win. In Game 2, it looked like the Dodgers were playing better again. They're getting home runs from Seager. They're playing well. And then Rich Hill gives up a home run to Jose Lobaton. Hangs a curveball, gives up a home run. That changed the series for Washington, and I believe it still gave them momentum until the Dodgers won Game 4. I expected the Nationals to win the series in Game 4, to be honest, because I didn't think the Dodgers had any momentum. Kershaw went out there, and then they blew the lead. I was like, here we go again. Every single year, the Dodgers get eliminated early in the playoffs. It was going to happen again. They didn't, and I think the momentum turns to the Dodgers a little bit tonight. I don't want to guarantee they win, but I think if Rich Hill pitches well, Dodgers get the win tonight.
Yes, Rich Hill is going on short rest again, so that is something else to keep in mind. Who knows how long he's going to be able to go. Julio Urias is also going to definitely get in there, the young lefty, so he will be able to spell the 36-year-old Hill when Hill can't go much more. And that is the main reason why I'm picking the Nationals to win, because Hill is going on short rest, and I don't believe that he will give them quality innings to keep the Dodgers in this game. The Dodgers' bats are going to have to show up if they want any chance to win.
I totally agree. And the bats really haven't showed up that much. There's been a couple early home runs in games that have kind of propelled the score to look a lot higher. But no, I agree. I still think they need to get early runs. I think the Nationals really need to pile on and get Rich Hill's pitch count up. I think that's a way they could definitely win this game. And you mentioned short rest. Rich Hill's had blister problems all season. He's never pitched on short rest ever, and he's an older fella. He's 36 years old. So all those factors go in. But again, it's hard to pick this final game. Both pitchers are fantastic. Scherzer, I'm not knocking him down a little bit. I expect this game to be like 2-1, and we'll see who gets the bigger hit and the bigger time. And we'll see.
No, it's okay. You can pick the Dodgers.
I'm going to pick the Dodgers.
Okay,
no, 100%.
okay. Yeah.
I got to go with my team.
It's okay.
So we'll move on to just a little prediction of the championship series. We'll start. I'll start with the AL. It's going to be Indians in Toronto, like we mentioned. I think if Toronto's bats keep staying up like they have, I think Toronto could win this series. I think they should win this series because their pitching has been good enough. J.A. Happ, Marco Estrada, Marcus Stroman have been fantastic this season, and they've been fantastic in the playoffs. So I expect the depletion in the rotation for Cleveland will affect them in a 7-game series more than it will affect them in a 5-game series. I think in a 5-game series, you can get away with having not too many starters because you just win 1 or 2 games. You win that series. But with a 7-game series, I think it's going to come down to more of a full roster is going to win, and I think Toronto's got the way more full roster.
I do agree with you. I'm picking Toronto to win because of their bats, and I feel that because they're very hot right now, it doesn't matter what the Indians bring as far as their pitching. Like we mentioned earlier, the Indians don't have as strong a pitching, in my personal opinion. When you have the firepower of Tulowitzki and Donaldson and Encarnacion, it's, this is where they make their money, and so far they've proven to do that. So until they get cold, I'm going to swing with the Blue Jays and run with them to take this series not regardless, but even if the Blue Jays pitching doesn't do well, the fact that the Blue Jays hitters can put up 8, 9, 10 runs in a game, when you need them to, gives me confidence that the Blue Jays can take this series as well.
And that's the good thing about having hot bats is that you're going to be able to stay in games even if your pitchers don't pitch very well. So I completely agree with you on that. Moving to the NL side, to kind of end the discussion about baseball today, do you think the Nationals or Dodgers could beat the Cubs in a 7-game series?
I would give the slight edge to the Dodgers because of Kershaw. I think that even though Kershaw has not done well previously in the playoffs, he is such a dynamic weapon, and I feel that if he were able to go for at least 2 games in this upcoming series, that he would be able to slow down the bats of the Cubs and at least get them to a Game 7. But yes, I would give the edge to the Dodgers.
Yeah, and we won't know until after today who actually is facing the team. I think the Nationals pitching, I kind of agree with you. I think the Dodgers would have a better chance, just strictly because they could sort of match pitching. Kenta Maeda didn't pitch very well, so I don't have a lot of faith in him right now. But I think the pitching matches with the Cubs pitching on the Dodgers side more than it would the Nationals. The Nationals, they got Max Scherzer, who's an all-star, superstar, Cy Young candidate. But then they got guys like Tanner Roark and Gio Gonzalez who struggled to stay in the rotation when they had a full rotation. Strasburg's out. I heard someone say that Strasburg might come back in the NLCS. I doubt that.
Nope, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. Maybe the World Series, but I even doubt that as well. So I think the pitching would have to go to the Dodgers. The hitting, I'm going to give the Nationals. Nationals have better hitting. Daniel Murphy should be the MVP of the NL. He hits the ball hard every single time. Better bats for the Nationals, better pitching is the Dodgers. So I'd give it to the Dodgers a little bit, but we don't really know, so I'm not going to make a proper prediction yet. That will end our discussion on the baseball so far. It's been a fantastic playoffs. The wild card games were fantastic. The series have been fantastic, and hopefully the rest of the playoffs will be great as well. On the other side of these random sound bites will be another edition of Do You Care?
That's cute, man. It's cute. But, my job is to be able to worry about what's going on here, and we don't worry about all the selfish guys we got over here, apparently. So we gonna figure that out.
Colin Kaepernick has been the most talked about NFL player this season since his initial protest during the national anthem. Now he has the chance to make headlines for his play on the field and turn around his team's losing 1-4 record. Chip Kelly has named him the starter for Week 6. He'll get his first nod of the season in Buffalo Sunday. Cap, are you ready?
Leafs back quickly. Nylander moving in, works it across in front. He scores! Matthews! What a luminescent night for Austin Matthews. Incredible. 4 goals.
After those interesting sound bites, it's time for Do You Care? And I'm going to start off by asking you, Nick, do you care Austin Matthews scored 4 goals in his NHL debut?
Oh my gosh, that was awesome. I do care. Austin Matthews, rookie, first overall pick in last year's NHL draft. Strangely, he's from Scottsdale, Arizona, which you wouldn't expect a hockey player, especially the best hockey player coming out of a draft, to be from. But that's where he's from. A little shout out to my little cousin who actually plays in his league right now. So the league's coming up. Hockey's getting up in Arizona, but it was awesome. The guy, nobody's ever done it before. He scored 4 goals in his NHL debut on Wednesday, and hey, nothing but a good future for him. But not as much for the Maple Leafs, who ended up losing that game. Jared, do you care that Ronda Rousey's returning to the UFC ring on December 30th at UFC 207?
I do care. Ronda Rousey is one of the major faces of UFC, obviously. I also care because she's not fighting Holly Holmes. I think that would have been a greater matchup for her and a way for her to redeem herself automatically instead of having to go up against Amanda Nunes. Nothing against Amanda Nunes. She is a great fighter, and she deserves a chance for the title. But I think it would have been more of an interesting matchup to see if Rousey could have come back and beat Holmes as a redemption fight, in a sense. Nick, do you care that Yasiel Puig wants to play for Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic?
No, I don't care because I don't really care about the World Baseball Classic. But it is an interesting story because you think, oh, Puig's Cuban. The Cubans don't let the guys that defect play on the Cuban team. So Yasiel Puig wants to play for a team. He's not going to play for Team USA because that just wouldn't work out. But he wants to play for Team Mexico. He had citizenship in Mexico. When he defected from Cuba originally, he played in the Mexican League, which was where the Dodgers were able to sign him from. So he has citizenship in Mexico. He would be eligible to do it. I hope he gets on a team. It would suck to not have a guy like Puig, but it is interesting that the Cuban government does not allow those players to come back. Jared, do you care that Tim Tebow helped a fan who had a seizure in the stands in his Arizona Fall League game earlier this week?
Yes, I do care, but not because it's Tim Tebow. Because if there was anyone else around this person when this was going on, you should, want to help that person, no matter what is going on. So, yes, because it's Tim Tebow, it's going to get hyped up, and there's a picture of Tim Tebow with his hand on the gentleman's leg praying for him, which is very, very great. But what about the people in the stands who were there immediately? They should have been, and I'm not saying they weren't, but they should have been helping there right along as well. So it's just, the nice thing to do to help out someone who is in need. So, yes, good job, Tim Tebow. That's the type of person that he is and the type of person that we expect him to be. Nick, do you care that the LA Kings goaltender, Jonathan Quick, was hurt in the Kings home opener?
I do care. I love the fact that we have a lot of hockey questions this time. Jonathan Quick, last night's game, which was Wednesday, he got hurt against San Jose Sharks, the defending Western Conference champions, left in the first period, and the Kings GM, Dean Lombardi, said that it was serious and that he's going to be out for a while. That sucks for any LA Kings fans here in Southern California because Quick is the guy. Quick is the reason we won 2 Stanley Cups. So, yes, obviously I do care. You can tell from the analysis I'm giving. Big loss for the Kings and a big loss for hockey overall. The Kings have the All-Star game this year in LA, so it would suck to not have Jonathan Quick play in that game. Jared, do you care that LSU running back Leonard Fournette is not playing again this week due to, air quotes, injury?
I do not care. If I were Leonard Fournette and I was even slightly injured, not slightly injured, but if I had a significant injury as to his, I would not play either because I will be looking towards my future. LSU has not had a great year so far. Obviously, Les Miles was fired earlier in the year, and I don't necessarily see them making it to a major bowl game. So if I'm Fournette, do I play and risk further injury, or do I sit out and wait till I'm completely healthy and then keep my draft status very high for this upcoming draft? You have to start thinking about the future. So I have no problem if Leonard Fournette does not play because he will be one of the top 2 running backs drafted in this upcoming year's class. So for him, sit out until you're completely healthy. I'm with you, my man. Nick, do you care that Russell Westbrook, his response to Kevin Durant saying he's a selfless player was that it was cute?
I love Russell Westbrook now. I'm telling you that right now. Ever since Durant left the Thunder, there's been soundbite after soundbite. And I'm surprised we haven't got one of his soundbites on the show till now. I know what we did today. But I love this. I do care because I don't like the fact that the Warriors just stacked their team up. I wasn't a fan of the Warriors before, and I'm even less of a fan of them now. And I feel bad for Westbrook. Durant, they could have done something special. They were seconds away and 1 game away from being in the NBA Finals against the Cavs last year, and Durant just leaves. So good for Westbrook, kind of battling Durant this whole time. Durant is not a selfless player. He's joined up with a bunch of all-stars to win a championship. There's nothing selfless about that. So I did believe it was cute as well. I'm going to agree with Russell Westbrook. But yeah, I do care. I love Russell Westbrook right now, and I love the fact that he's giving us quotes every single day. Jared, do you care that Colin Kaepernick is starting for the 49ers this week?
Yes, I do care, and it has nothing to do with the hoopla that has been surrounding Kaepernick ever since the season started. The 49ers are 1-4. Blaine Gabbert, who's been their starting quarterback for the first 5 games this year, he has a 58% completion percentage. He's thrown 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Now, he hasn't been the complete reason why they've been losing, but he also hasn't helped them win. So at a certain point, unless you're just trying to tank and lose, if I'm Chip Kelly, you need to put Kaepernick in and see what you can get from the guy. Now, last year when Kaepernick played from the week 1 to week 8 before he got injured, his completion percentage was 59%. So, it's not like he's going to come in and be the complete savior and turn this team around. But I would definitely put Kaepernick in. He's more mobile than Blaine Gabbert is. And, they're going up against a tough opponent this week, so I'm not saying they're going to get a win. But I think it might rejuvenate the team a little more, give them a little more juice and say, hey, guys, we're going to mix it up this week. Let's see if we can go out here and if Kaepernick can sling it around and use his legs to score more points. And we're not done talking about Kaepernick, the 49ers, or the NFL. On the other side of the break, we will dive in more to Week 5 of the NFL season.
And onto the field comes number 12. Tom Brady's 17th NFL season begins here in Cleveland in Week 5, and that's a new record of tenure with the Patriots.
For the win from 38 yards, Aguayo right down the middle. What a win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They come to town and knock out the defending champs.
And the Broncos, the reigning Super Bowl champs, slipped to 4-1. The Falcons, after beating Carolina and now Denver, knocking off the 2 Super Bowl teams of last year.
And Ezekiel Elliott, 15 carries, 134 on the ground, and a couple of touchdowns. Dallas is 4-1. Its only loss was Week 1.
Oh, Ezekiel Elliott has been hot this season, as you just heard in that last soundbite. Elliott, 2 touchdowns, a long run. Jared's smiling over here because he's ready to talk about his team, so I'll let you take it away. Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes, he has lived up to the hype so far, and it's surprisingly nice to have the Cowboys back in the winning column after last year's just awful performance for the season. By week 10 of last year, I was just done. So to have them be 4-1 right now is unexpected because of the loss of Tony Romo and because of how well their 2 rookies, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, have played. I also have to give props to their defense that still hasn't been fantastic, but they were able to get 4 sacks on the Bengals this past week, and they've kept their team in games. They haven't given up the big plays that have cost them games so far, and they've just, you know what, I told them, I said at the beginning of the year, just be average. You don't need to be great. You don't need to get 40 turnovers in a game or in a season, and 4 or 5 sacks a game. Just be average. Do not lose the game. And so far, they have done exactly that. So this week will be a big test. They're going up against the Green Bay Packers and Mr. Aaron Rodgers. So I believe if the Cowboys can come out of this game with a W on the road in Lambeau, then I think you have to seriously start saying the Cowboys are one of the best teams in the league. If they do win as well, that's just going to add more fuel to the fire as far as when Romo is healthy again. Does he come back or does he ride the bench? I'm still going to ride with Romo. That's my guy. I love what Dak has done. I think it's a good situation to have to where you have 2 quarterbacks who can play, but I'm going with the experience in my man Romo. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Well, 2 things, and you're completely right about everything you just said. The Cowboys, they've been fantastic this season, and they're beating good teams. They beat Cincinnati Bengals last week. Great defense, and Elliott ran all over them. And you mentioned the Romo thing. Your hot take is that Romo, you should start Romo. I think that you could start both the guys. And what I mean by that is you start Romo as the primary guy. You can put Dak Prescott in the running situations. Create that kind of that awareness from the defense that, we don't know what the Cowboys are going to run with. I think with the running back, it helps that Elliott's turned out to be a great running back. I think if he wasn't, it'd be a little tough for the Cowboys this season. But it's worked out. Prescott's been awesome. Elliott's been awesome. And we'll see about Romo. We don't really know what to expect yet. But I still think you could play both quarterbacks. I don't think you just shove Prescott on the bench. But yeah, you're right. The defense has been solid. If they could step it up a little more, I would say that Dallas is a legit kind of playoff contender. I think they already are on their way to the playoffs based on their record. But I think if they could continue doing what they're doing, hey, they'll make the playoffs. Their division isn't too hard of a division to win, especially with the Eagles. They don't look as good as they did when they were undefeated. So, no, I agree with you. The Cowboys are awesome this year. So we'll move on to another team that's not playing awesome that was good last year, and that is the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers are 1-4, and they just lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home on Monday Night Football. Granted, Cam Newton didn't play, but they look horrible right now. And I don't know what to say about them. They were in the championship game. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl last year. Jared, what do you think's happening in Carolina right now?
Carolina's whole mantra last year was keep pounding. You know, they bang on the drum, and it doesn't matter if you're up by 30 or down by 30. You're going to keep pounding away. You're never going to give up, even if your backups are in the game. This year, I just don't see that same fire and same intensity. Cam Newton, who obviously was out this past game, the first 5 weeks, he hasn't really been spectacular. And it's not to say that he always needs to be, because they have a lot of talent on that team, but he is the heart and soul of that team. And when you see Cam Newton pouting and not smiling and just kind of being very sluggish, I think that rubs off on the other teammates. You need your $100 million quarterback to be always upbeat, always be thinking positively. And when that's not happening, it's going to create a type of doubt in the other player's mind. So with the loss of Josh Norman, obviously, as we saw a few weeks ago when they got torched by Julio Jones and the Atlanta Falcons for 300 yards, that is a major factor as well. This team is predicated on a run scheme and playing tough, hard-nosed defense. And their front seven, I should say, their defensive line and their linebackers have been doing a good job, but their secondary is so young. They're starting 2 rookies. So other opposing offenses are just chucking it up, and they've been able to score points that way. This game on Monday night, I was very, very surprised that the Buccaneers were able to come out with the win. Derek Anderson, who is a reliable backup, he's been in this league for multiple years, was not able to get it done. He had 2 interceptions, and the interesting thing was his only 2 career starts with the Carolina Panthers were both against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he won both games. So I was going into that matchup thinking, that's an easy win for them, and it turns out it wasn't. Props to the Bucs.
Yeah, I want to touch a little bit on that whole Cam Newton pouting. It's just you're right. He doesn't look the same. First, he's got a pompous attitude right now for no reason. It's like he's owed something right now, and you're right. It must be rubbing off on the team. You mentioned losing Norman. They're getting killed by every good receiver in the league every week. You mentioned Julio Jones. 300 yards. Who does that? Like, there's been like 5 or 6 guys that's ever done that in the league, and this is supposed to be the Super Bowl. This is a Super Bowl team. They need to pick up their attitudes. Ron Rivera needs to step up and say something to this team. Cam Newton needs to be more of a leader. We saw him the other day riding on a scooter in downtown Carolina in traffic without a helmet on in concussion protocol. I mean, what is going on? It's all contributing to the 1-4 record, and they're at risk of not making the playoffs soon if they don't step it up. You get to 5 or 6 losses this early in the season, it's going to be tough. The NFC is considerably tough every year, and there's some 10-6 teams that don't make the playoffs. So Carolina needs to step it up quick, or they're not going to make the playoffs, and they're going to look really bad. Moving on to another pretty good matchup over the weekend was Minnesota. Minnesota going 5-0. And who would have thought that without Teddy Bridgewater and without Adrian Peterson? They played the Houston Texans, a good defense. Now playing without J.J. Watt, so not as good. But they totally stuffed DeAndre Hopkins, and they stuffed Lamar Miller, and they stopped Brock Osweiler. And this Vikings team looks like a contender. What do you think about them?
They're definitely a contender. Even with the Packers in this division right now, the way that the Vikings played the Packers earlier in the year, I have to give the nod completely to the Vikings. They have a bye week this week, so they get to get a little healthier. Going into the season, when you lose your starting quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater and one of the best running backs in the league in Adrian Peterson, I was giving this team maybe a 500 winning percentage through the first half of the season. And right now, they've completely shattered that thought. Their defense is one of, if not the best defense in the league. Coach Mike Zimmer, who is known and always been a defensive coordinator before taking the head coaching job with the Vikings, has really got this team going right now. As you call them, the UCLA defense, because there's so many UCLA players that are now with the Vikings. But you know what? They've come together as a team. Offensively, Sam Bradford has looked really good. I'm sorry. He hasn't had to do too much. He hasn't been forced to win games or forced to make crazy throws. It's play tough defense, run the ball. We may not put up 30 every game, but we know we're not going to give up 30, and that's always going to keep us in the matchup.
I totally agree. Vikings are a fantastic team. Their defense is setting them apart from other teams, just like Broncos last year. Not necessarily super good offense, but they're getting it done, and defense is one of the best defenses in the league right now, maybe the best. So if they keep it up, they're bound for the playoffs, and they're bound for the Super Bowl. Do you want to say one more thing about?
I did. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to chime in there.
No worries.
I just wanted to say one thing about the Houston Texans. Brock Osweiler, you're getting paid like $72 million, right?
I don't think he knows that.
You left Denver, the Super Bowl champions last year, to come to Houston, and, it was all gravy, and you're getting all this money, and you're going to do really well. What have you done this season? Because I'm pretty sure earlier in the year, you got shut out by the New England Patriots without Tom Brady. And then this past week, you really can't do much against Minnesota without Adrian Peterson or Teddy Bridgewater. Now, obviously, you don't play defense, but you can score, right? And so far, I'm looking at your stat line, and you have 6 touchdowns to 7 interceptions with 1 fumble and a QBR rating of 50.3. By my standards, you are stealing money from the Houston Texans, and you should be giving your paychecks back to them until you can prove that you can win some games. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
I'm going to blame a little bit of it on Bill O'Brien because O'Brien's not getting DeAndre Hopkins the ball. Hopkins is a premier talent, one of the top receivers in the league, and they're not even throwing the ball toward him. I know he has good corners on the last few matchups, but still, I think he's less than 100 yards the last couple games. Ridiculous. Osweiler needs to step up. They've looked horrible since that New England game. You're right. They look really bad. And I agree with you. And you brought up those stats really quickly, too. You really wanted to get that out. Just wait till we get to the Chargers, and you'll see me do the same thing. Speaking of the team that we were just talking about, the Patriots, I can't believe we waited to this long in the NFL segment. Somehow I forgot that Tom Brady returned to the NFL this week.
Oh, the world can go around again.
Oh, my gosh. And they killed the Cleveland Browns. Jared, what did you think about Tom Brady returning? And what do you think about the Patriots for the rest of the season?
Tom Brady returning was a revenge game for him. I don't care what he says. He would never say it in front of reporters or in front of any type of media, but that was a revenge game. He wanted to come out and say, listen, you want to suspend me for 4 games? My team can still go 3-1 without me, and when I come back, I'm going to throw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and completely annihilate the Browns. I was not surprised by how well he played. I was actually surprised that the Browns were not more up for this game. If I was a Cleveland Brown player, especially on defense, knowing that Tom Brady was coming back, I would have expected a little more out of this Browns team. It is the Browns, so I guess I was overthinking things a little too much. But no, it is actually good to see Tom Brady back. And this Patriots team is just they're scary again. And it's always, it just seems like, the norm now. Oh, the Patriots are going to win. The Patriots are going to win. Coming into this year, well, they don't have Tom Brady for the first 4 games. Maybe the Jets or the Bills or potentially the Dolphins can, come up and maybe scare the Patriots and give them a run for that title, that division title. That is not going to happen at all. The Patriots will run away with this division again. They will make it into the playoffs, and it's going to be the same old story.
I totally agree. Brady, I'm not a Patriots fan at all. I don't really even like Tom Brady. But I felt that he was so unjustly suspended. And not even that. You look at Le'Veon Bell from the Steelers, who was suspended as well this season. He was only suspended 3 games. Brady was 4. Bell could still practice with the team, or at least he could be on the premises. What did the NFL get? When did the NFL get the right to just say, "Oh, Brady, you can't even be close to the team. You can't even go there"? It's ridiculous. So of course he was going to come out and just beat the crap out of the Browns. And Jared, I'm disappointed. Did you actually think the Browns were going to come out for a game ready to play?
You know what?
Never do.
Coach Hugh Jackson, I just figured because it's the Patriots, they were at home. I wanted to give them a little leeway. They've gone through 5 quarterbacks this year. I was trying to be nice, but apparently I can't do that anymore.
No. And if we were technically savvy, what I would do right now is I would say that I told you so, and that we would probably play a clip of me saying that the Browns were going to be the worst team in the league. They're 0-5, people. I'm still right, but we're not technical savvy, so we're not going to put that soundbite in here right now. We're just going to hope that you remember. Oh my gosh, the Patriots, they just are extremely disappointing. And it's great to have Brady back, and I don't think there's another team in the AFC that you could say is going to the Super Bowl besides the Patriots right now. Another team, the one team you could, is the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos suffered their first loss of the season against the Atlanta Falcons, another really good team. This was a good matchup. Denver, they didn't play with Paxton. They didn't play with Trevor Siemian. They had Paxton Lynch playing, and Lynch didn't look good, and it was probably the reason Denver couldn't get it going. I want to turn it a little bit more on the Falcons. I didn't expect them to do anything this year. They're 4-1, and with Carolina not playing well, they're running away with the division like New England is. What do you think about Atlanta this season?
I am very surprised by the Atlanta Falcons and how well they're playing, regardless of the other division opponents. The fact that they have gone 4-1, it speaks maybe not necessarily to their offense, because they have weapons. Matt Ryan is a good quarterback. I wouldn't call him an elite quarterback, but a good one. You have Julio Jones, who is one of the top 3 receivers in this league.
Julio.
You have Devontae Freeman, a very good up-and-coming running back, and their offensive line is getting better. It's their defense, to me, that is very surprising. Their coach obviously comes from the Seattle Seahawks and that kind of Legion of Boom style defense where they don't necessarily, always scheme and adjust to what the offense is doing. They come out and they say, we're going to run our defense. You try and beat us. And with his second year in this system, it's definitely proving dividends. So I give a lot of the credit to the Falcons. Even though the Broncos did not have their starting quarterback in Trevor Siemian, they did have Paxton Lynch, who was going into this game as his first regular season game, and it definitely looked like it. He got pounded on. Vic Beasley, I believe, had 3 sacks for the game. And yes, this Atlanta team is so far looking very, very scary and a legit contender to make this playoffs this year and make some noise.
Yeah, and they were missing Deion Jones, too, their middle linebacker from LSU. So they are scary. You're right. Atlanta, the offense is working like it did a couple years ago. You remember when they were like 13-3, 12-4 a couple years ago? That's what they look like now. Even though Julio Jones is a little bit banged up right now, you're right, they look good. That two-headed monster at running back, Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, really working. Both those guys are playing well. Tevin Coleman, 4 receptions, 132 yards, and a touchdown as a running back last game. So I believe if you combine him and Freeman's stats, they were over 200 all-purpose yards. And that's against the Broncos defense that won them the Super Bowl last year. So the Falcons are impressive. They're beating good teams now. which is a little different. Back in the day, they were just beating kind of bad teams, teams like the Buccaneers in the division, and the teams like the Saints who weren't very good. Now they're beating good teams. I want to transfer over a little bit to the defense, to Denver. Well, they are pretty much defense, but we'll transfer it over to Denver. Trevor Siemian, he's coming back this week. They're going to play tonight. We'll talk about that game a little later. Do you see Trevor Siemian being able to succeed in the playoffs?
That's a very good question. And as of right now, I would have to say yes. Because so far, he's proven that he is not only the best quarterback option for the Broncos, but that he can lead this team and score points, and it's not all about their defense. As you saw in this last game against the Falcons without Siemian, Paxton Lynch came in. He threw for 223 yards. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but he was sacked 6 times for 40 yards. One of the things that Coach Kubiak and John Elway told Siemian is get rid of the ball. Do not take sacks. Do not throw the ball to the other team. We have a good enough defense that you don't need to score 20, 30, even 20 points a game. Just keep us in the game and manage it. So, yes, I do. Because of the scheme that they play, I feel like it fits Siemian. And before this season started, I didn't even know who Trevor Siemian was. And now he's turning out to be a viable option for this team to take them to the playoffs and make some noise.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you. I think they won't have that good of a record this year, but I think they're going to scare some teams in the playoffs. Siemian, you're right. He gets the ball out quick. Paxton Lynch didn't do that. That's the reason they lost. But, yeah, no, Siemian looks good. If they can get C.J. Anderson to continue his play at running back like he has been, and if they can get the ball to Demaryius Thomas a little more and get him more involved in the offense, I think they're a scary team. I think they're one of those teams in the AFC that can step up and compete with the Patriots. But I think, like we were talking earlier, I think the Patriots are the alpha dog team in the AFC, and we'll see what the Broncos do. Quick analysis on these next 2 games. I'll start with the LA Rams. We're doing the podcast in LA, so I feel obligated to talk about the Rams. The Rams, they got their first touchdown in LA since 1994.
Hey, good job,
go.
guys.
Yeah,
Way to go.
It's amazing that we're saying that in week 5 that they are getting their first touchdown in anything, to be honest. But they ultimately lost. Quick thoughts on the Rams game against the Buffalo Bills.
It's not surprising to me. The Rams came out of the gate the first 2 games and looked like they were going to be horrible. Didn't even know if they could win a game. And then they go and beat Seattle, and they beat the Cardinals. And you go, whoa, wait a minute. Who is this team? Are they, they've kind of been very up and down. So then they go up this past week and they play Buffalo at home. And I actually would have expected the Rams to win this game, but Buffalo came out. Sean McCoy had 150 yards rushing, and the Bills actually surprised me a little bit. They've also come back from an 0-2 start, and now they're 3-2. For the Rams, I think it's going to be that way the rest of the year. It's going to be a roller coaster. They're going to have some games where you're going to say, wow, this team can really put it together. And then there's going to be some other games where you say, yep, that's the typical Rams. So I see the Rams going 7-9, 8-8. Nothing special in their first year, but people are still going to be excited about this team.
Yeah, they're going to be a Jeff Fisher team, 7-9, 8-8. No, really quick analysis from me on the Rams. I know they were missing a couple defensive players, so I'm going to attribute that to the loss a little bit to the Bills. Also, I heard that Jared Goff was playing much better in practice, so if they start to lose games, we may see a Jared Goff sighting. You may see some fumbled snaps. You may see some bad throws, and you may see some joking on the sideline, but he might get in the game otherwise. Switching to another team you just mentioned earlier, Arizona Cardinals. They got the win on Thursday. I know you have a hot take about the Cardinals or a gripe that you wanted to say on the podcast.
Going into the year, I thought the Cardinals were going to be one of the top teams not only in the West, but in the entire NFC conference. And they have completely underwhelmed. Even though Carson Palmer did not play in this last game and they were able to win, Carson Palmer has not played up to expectations at all this year. Neither has that defense. Even though they're still able to get interceptions and turnovers, they aren't able to stop teams when they need it the most. I'm very disappointed in the team as a whole because of the talent that they have. This isn't a Browns team who we expect to be bad. I expected this team to win the division and beat the Seahawks, and so far, they haven't done any of that. Coach Bruce Arians, you need to step it up a little bit and really get this team going, or else it's going to be a lost season very soon.
I agree with you. It's been tough being a Cardinals fan these last few weeks. Even though we got the win against 49ers, way too many points to give up 21 to a horrible offense that now just switched their quarterback. Defense needs to step it up. Patrick Pearson's been playing well, but Tyrann Mathieu hasn't done anything. And they've looked sluggish. The offense has looked like they expect something to happen, and then nothing happens. Palmer is back off concussion protocol, so he will play against the Jets on Monday Night Football against former defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. So it should be an interesting game based on that fact. But yeah, Cardinals have stepped up, and they need to get some wins. They have a tough schedule. They play, I believe, Jets, Seahawks, and then the Carolina Panthers. So although the Carolina Panthers don't look that good this year, it's gonna be a big game because they played last year and they got killed. So yeah, I agree with you. Cardinals have stepped up. All right, our last segment of the NFL, Week 5, Week 6, whatever you want to call it. You knew we had to talk about them. You knew it was coming. First of all, we'll go all the way back to Week 4 since we didn't do the podcast last week. Jared, tell me what happens in San Diego games.
Nick, I feel like I should have you say it.
Okay, I'm gonna say it.
Yes,
I'm gonna say
you're
it.
so animated.
Joey Bosa doesn't play, and someone tears their ACL. Last week, Jason Verrett tore his ACL, and Joey Bosa didn't play. But Jared, it all changed this week. Nobody tore their ACL, and
Joey Bosa played.
Yay! They did continue to blow leads, though. They blew a lead again. I believe I saw a stat the other day where the Chargers they've had a lead in 4 of their 5 games, and let me rephrase that. They've had a lead in 4 out of their 5 games in the last minute and a half, which means they've blown 4 games because they've lost 4 games. I don't know what's going on with the Chargers. They just need to step it up. There's injuries, but the offense isn't that bad. They got some great pieces, and I just don't know what's going on. The Chargers are just disappointed. The fans are getting pissed here in Southern California. It's been a weird year for them so far.
Yeah, I disagree with you when you say that the Chargers actually have a good offense. Other than Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, who are both losing a step but can still play in this league, I don't really see anyone on that team that is a viable option. You have Melvin Gordon, who has scored, I believe, 6 touchdowns this year. So from last year, that's a major improvement. But he was a first-round pick. He's supposed to be doing this. Also, when you lose that many stars and players to season-ending injuries, it's going to affect your team. So even though we joke about the Chargers, about how bad they are, when you lose that many players, you're just, unless you have very good depth like the Patriots do, you're not going to be able to win games. So I picked the Raiders to win this game this week, and it was closer than I thought because, once again, the Chargers choked and they couldn't even execute a field goal attempt. But, yeah, it's just, this is the typical Chargers, and guess what? They get a chance to redeem themselves tonight on Thursday Night Football at home against the Broncos. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I think that Broncos defense is going to be licking their chops and coming after Phillip Rivers all night long.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. We do make fun of them a lot, but it's going to knock on you, all these injuries. But speaking of the Thursday night game, in beautiful Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, they're putting a primetime game in that piece of crap stadium in San Diego. I'm sorry, I had to say, I've been there. It's horrible. But I'm going to give the Chargers a little bit of a chance tonight. I think, Joey Bosa's playing, like we mentioned. I don't think they blow a lead, and I'm going to say they win. I'm going to say the Chargers win tonight against the Broncos. Hopefully I'm wrong so we can make fun of myself and the Chargers next week. That is going to end the podcast today. We're going to leave it on that stupid note. I want to thank the MLB Playoffs for being really fun to watch this season. Big games tonight for both the NFL and the MLB. Dodgers and Nationals Game 5. That's going to start at 5 o'clock. We'll probably release the podcast sometime close to then. But and also Chargers and Broncos, big games in the NFL, and more playoff games to go. We will be back with you next week. But for Nick Nenad,
I'm Jared Smith. Go Cowboys.
And this has been the Cover 2 Podcast.